Hi, Muñaños gamers. This is Jesus from Jesus Gaming, and welcome to episode 3 of Continue News and Gaming. Thank you very much for your support and the consideration of listening yet to another episode or watching this through YouTube if you're not seeing or hearing, actually, say, from the major podcast publishing. We also have my YouTube channel, Jesus Gaming, or at JesusGG, where we have the audiovisual version of this podcast. And also, this is going to be the State of the Union or so to part of the podcast. What I have been doing, some things behind the scenes. I'm still trying to recapture all the previous ideas that I have for future content. So I don't want the channel, at least the YouTube channel, to transform completely to podcast exclusive content. So bear with me until I reorganize myself because that's what happened since the last month and the last incident that I had with gaming live streaming, which still on hold without any short term or long term returning. I don't want to say never, never, but I'm still focusing on demand content, mainly long format content. Sure, will be only for promoting my long content. So that is it. This is the boring part. Please bear with me as here we go. We are on a week later after the whole Summer Game Fest whole week and main weekend, and for IO Interactive, in terms of not being releasing self-made games, this week serves as the debut of them serving as a publisher for a game known as MindsEye. And MindsEye is actually a game developed by a company or a studio named Build a Rocket Boy, which is a studio based in Edinburgh, in Scotland. And the game has the highlight that includes Leslie Benzies as part of his roster, if you will. And for those who doesn't know who Leslie Benzies is, he's the former Rockstar Games or Rockstar North president, which he also worked in a lot of Grand Theft Auto games. And there was high expectations, not only because this is a first serious AAA game. This is the first attempt of IO Interactive going full as a publisher, meaning that they don't develop the game, but they splash their IO Interactive logo to serve as a publishing, and of course, having some part of the revenue that the game does might receive during his launch back in June 10th, 2025. But something happened, something that is unfortunately kind of a normal things in these days that gaming developer or gaming development, I should say, is not as a feasible thing and a complete success in the first try. And that has been kind of a uncomfortable thing that we have been observing with many games. And it's kind of part of part Cyberpunk 2077 launch and the day before launch. So before getting into what happened, let's do some quick overview about Man's Eye. Man's Eye is a 2025 action adventure game developed by Build a Rocket Boy, and like I said, it's published by IO Interactive. It released on PlayStation 5, PC, and the Xbox Series S and X back in June 10. Take a linear third-person action adventure game that includes a pseudo open world similar like the Mafia games, specifically the first Mafia game, and you're part of what is called Red Rock City, and this is the first game that it makes its or its concept comes from what is called everywhere, which is upcoming massively multiplayer online game and gaming platform that has a system for game creation, or in better speaking, a sandbox, which is also developed by Build a Rocket Boy. So takes MindsEye as his first product of this multi-platform game creation system, aka sandbox. The premise of the game is that you assume the control of Jacob Diaz, a former soldier with a mysterious neural implant known as the Man's Eye. Suffering from memory loss and flashback, he heads toward the fictional desert metropolis of Red Rocks, based on Las Vegas, where he aims to discover the secret behind his implant. Sounds good so far. And like I said, Leslie Benzi serves as the writer of the story. He serves as the also as the director of the game. So you could expect that the game release or launch should go uh, flawless, or at minimum with just needing a quick day one patch. But the reality is that troubles were just mounting on since day one. Some early reports from early adopters of the game just noticed how much of a buggy the game is, with non-playable characters behaving strangely, characters kind of melting like a freaking clay disaster of mixing in just by running them over or getting closer to them, with also more illogical things that you would expect for a game that is supposed to have like a good programming and also better AI than it was actually promoted since a long time ago. And IO Interactive went ahead and included Man Size as part of the Summer Game Fest weekend, which um, one can say that if you don't really read the story, that this is not an IO Interactive game, but a published game by them, then maybe IO Interactive kind of have like a space of concern if this is going to taint all the IO Interactive publishing efforts. So, with that being said, the reception has been kind of unfavorable. Of course, the game released in a state that doesn't look like it's finished, and there was a lot of cleanup to do. And somebody in the quality assurance part of the game really did the failure. The situation went so bad that while it is kind of a mix of the day before and Cyberpunk 2077 issue, this is one of the few times that you will hear PlayStation refunding players even after going ahead on the normal terms that you can be granted a refund for playing a game. Well, PlayStation didn't want to go risk something for a thing that they don't have control, and players requesting, of course, refund that were granted. Kind of a recall back from 2020 and early 2021 with the release of Cyberpunk 2077. And the weird thing is that Build a Rocket Boy co-CEO have his own theory on the reaction of the game. And for this guy saying that, I'm trying to look of his name in my notes while I'm talking about this, and it's kind of interesting that a game that is being labeled as a broken mess filled with bugs and enemy encounters that lack of depth. Mark Gerard, I found his name on his note, on my note, I should say. He responded to a question if he believes that all the people who reacted negatively were financed by someone. He replied that 100%. And there has this theory that, yeah, with the Leslie Benzi is being involved in the game as a director and writer. There has been kind of a speculation that Rockstar Game they wanted to uh, have the risks, if you will, of having MindsEye competing with Grand Theft Auto 6, just in case that MindsEye is resulting in yet another surprising release game for 2025, which this wasn't the case, but to go ahead and responded, and actually this wasn't the Discord server that Mark General responded that he believed 100% that he believes that this is a smear campaign just to have the game being on a negative spotlight. The thing is that it is all well documented. I haven't tried the game, but I have also, you can see other channels and live streams and taking in context that at last minute, Build a Rocket Boy canceled their release day special streaming through I believe it was Twitch, and taking in context that they didn't share review copies or review codes for the digital version for outlets to try it out. They gave away codes for content creators and gaming uh influencers, if you will. uh I think that that kills, and if not kills, damage a lot the scenario where there's a smear campaign behind the doors with people with bad faith on Build a Rockets Boys and Man's Eye. It's kind of sad that we're seeing this nowadays. Gaming development, instead of being more feasible and easy, it has its challenges, and it has its challenges because we already reached to a peak that gaming development can reach, and the industry just forced to have yet another peak on gaming development. And I think that gaming development has become so powerful that no studios had managed to control or harness this power. I mean, if you hear nowadays that Unreal Engine can keep keep it up with new tools and new boundaries, and Unity followed by, and the universe of gaming engines also following by, is that the industry doesn't want a peak. They just want to keep growing gaming development, and this is kind of the challenges that goes along with it. And the economic perspective of outsources QA company trying to harness as much contrast as they can. And I'm taking this as an example for Cyberpunk 2077, which was documented that the game's initial problems that launched in the end of 2020, it was a mix of CD Projekt Red becoming kind of uh, a victim of its self arrogance and trusting too much to outsourcers QA. I remember covering that a few years ago when I was the blogger for the now retired social media for gamers GGS TV, and that was it's kind of a fascinating that 5 years later we are seeing the same scenario. Honestly, I hope that ManSide gets better. Uh, this has prompted me as a consumer and gamer to really wait out and see. I'm trying to give some faith on the game, but I'm not risking investing in the game like I did with Cyberpunk 2077. Uh, the case of Cyberpunk was interesting because the game launched simultaneously on PC, consoles, and Google Stadia. And the version that I actually pre-ordered was the Google Stadia, and PC and Google Stadia was the actual place to have like the less problems or less bug version of Cyberpunk 27 was Stadia and PC version. Unfortunately, ManSide didn't have this kind of a situation because even PC version presented troubles. But I do hope that Build the Rockets Boy have already gathered lesson learns and hoping that the game get to a better state. By the recording of this, they already launched some patches and they announced that were disappointed and apologized for the initial experience that gamers had. But I just hope that they fix the game, and the sooner the better. This early on the podcast, continuing news and gaming, I never thought that I had to talk about this sad topic within the gaming industry itself, but this past weekend, I think that makes it worthy have a motivation on talking about my perspective being a pro physical medium. And yeah, I'm talking about Blu-rays, DVD, cartridges, everything that you can touch. There's something tangible, and there's something that you can have it like a library of game of every or anything. And I think that I will see in this in a perspective of a gaming collector, which I am, since I have the notion of the world around me, and whenever I could hold a NES controller or the Nintendo Entertainment System, yeah, it's beautiful to see a library of game, but and I'm not trying to actually a recapitulation on where we came as we are today can be a nice new topic for exclusive YouTube video, but I'm gonna do the too long don't read version of it, and is that PC gaming saw the opportunity to actually sell games without having the process of having like the physical version. And strangely enough, PC gaming pre or mid 2000s and before was kind of the standard thing, or and the equivalence of what you call today a limited or special edition, or maybe a collector edition of a nowadays game, is actually the regular version of a PC gaming or physical PC gaming. I mean, even visiting electronic boutique, Babash, before GameStop took them over, it was nice to see the PC gaming version practically covering one third of the store or the location of the or the branch, if you will, about the electronic boutique, Babash, including Toys R Us also. Yeah, this kind of a boomerish recall. Uh, it is hard because I'm not trying to say, well, maybe I am a new neo boomer, but I'm a 80s baby, 90s kid. So practically, I didn't see how the Nintendo Entertainment System saved the gaming industry after the video game crash, and maybe I haven't seen the first stretch of Nintendo taking over the video game side of things, but I do remember Nintendo having to compete with Sega. PC gaming wasn't like a niche, like a third alternative. It was just like a niche set of users that had the money to actually buy games, and there wasn't a need to have or at least in a certain point there wasn't a need to have like a powerful computer, because computer was kind of a office thing from the 70s and 80s. In the 90s there was kind of a influx of gaming within computers, which I think that I can highlight ID Software with Doom really raised the bar in the beginning of the 90s, and it was for the good for having PC gaming take a height. And then it came the generations that you call it nowadays GPU, the graphic cards. Back in the day, it was called 3D accelerators, and it was optional. It was not immediate need to have to play with high quality video games. So all this, it's about topic that I shared on a subreddit that Reddit. And yes, I know that I'm trying to avoid Reddit because, excuse me if you're a Reddit fan, but there hasn't been any opportunity, and no matter what the topic and what the subreddit is, that I can have like a healthy and civilized debate. Everything is unilateral, or you are right or you are wrong. There's no kind of a space of debating. So I didn't want to rise like you're right, you're wrong, typical scuffling, but it fascinated me when I raised about Xbox team that was in charge to highlight or made the accommodations for third party games and their own first party studio to have the physical versions of Xbox Series X games, because the S doesn't have a Blu-ray reader or a Blu-ray drive, just the Xbox Series X. Uh, I was going uh, getting the typical answer. PC has been doing this in the last 20 plus years. Why is this an issue now? And I just responded back that why something 20 plus years has to be a normal thing. And my perspective about the implicit disappearance of physical versions, it's about making value for your money, making your money feels valuated. I remember back in the day, and yes, I understand that the inflation is a factor, that nowadays gaming is kind of more cheaper than the 90s. The problem with that sentiment is that at least in the 90s, you have a really big detailed box with a big detailed art, a lot of booklets, a booklet that gives you the perspective if you're into the game store or history or storyline, and you have a good quality of ads that you will only get it for free if you buy gaming magazines and entertainment, Game the Monthly, Game Pro. That's all that comes in my mind right now. And all those kind of things that you were included during the 90s and early 2000s games, nowadays is all part of a limited exclusives, or even collector's edition is the equivalent of what you get with a standard edition back in the days in the 90s. And I refuse that this could be a normal thing. Maybe I went too hard when I said that people that doesn't have this as a concern, maybe they are kind of a yes gamer. And on the other hand, I think that this is what I believe it is happening. The gaming industry just make some gamers to accept it, not another alternative. And yeah, there's the stand. That is what is called standard limited collector's edition. This is kind of the other reply that I get when I mention things like that. But I mean, if we are going to take the example of Metal Gear Solid Delta 3, Metal Gear Delta, oh my God, Metal Gear Delta Snake Eaters collector's edition for our market is just a patch that it's not the first time that Konami hand out patches for both Metal Gear Solid, at least 3, Peace Walker, and 5, which are based on the main Naked Snake, Punish Venom Snake storyline. But you got a diorama and you need to build the diorama yourself. Meanwhile, the Eastern version or Japanese version of the collector's edition, it gives you like a figurine of Naked Snake at the equivalent of the first of the same price of $199.99 without counting taxes, shipping, and everything. Okay, and let's get real. Gaming as a hobby, gaming as fandom, and gaming as collecting was never a sheep culture. It was never it was never meant to be, or at least it was never seen that it is a cheaper hobby. uh, sh- uh, associate everything you want with sheep. It ain't cheap. Gaming, it ain't cheap. I understand that you don't make companies to give out games, or in the case of gaming industry, you don't give out games for free because you had to employ people and you need to make incomes. I'm not against that. What am I really against is that the notion that companies were making games as an art first, revenue second, got twisted to the point that all companies are for revenue. And I think the sentiment that the main audience for gaming are kind of a yes gamer because they allowed this is what I meant on things that you can vote with your wallet. I'm not saying that I'm going to vote not buying games because that will be a complete hypocrite thing to do because I invest in PC gaming, which again, since the mid 2000s and forward, it's really strange to hear somebody saying, I got a physical version of a game, and only collectors or people interested on having like a physical thing might have the audacity to do so. And I might get the point that hey, there are companies like Limited Run Games, PMP, 8-bit. Yeah, kind of they kind of have like a balance on trying to have physical mediums despite the industry moving on all digitals, which gets me to the other side of the coin. Or if you flip the coin, it's all about gaming preservations and what's going to happen when a physical medium when far from its physical life. Because yes, DVDs, CDs can get uh it can get rotten, especially if you're living in areas where there's too much heat most time of the year. And limited run games really appeals to what could have been a great success launch of a game that doesn't have a normal physical versions. Companies like them do the physical versions. I'm not against gaming preservation. At the contrary, I do want people keep playing and remembering where nowadays games came from. And the only way to do that is to actually give it the original release, which is something that I can't think of anybody else like outside GOG with their preservation program, which kind of collide with my notion that physical medium doesn't need to disappear. But I guess that the counterpoint of the physical medium disappearing and there's nothing much that we can do about it is then supporting people like PMP, 8-bit, Little Bit Wrong Games, and then GOG if there isn't any plausible way to get a physical version of classic retro gaming. To me, it's kind of a sad. It's kind of a sad the acceptance that we're seeing that the physical medium is disappearing. Until last generation, my champion was Nintendo because with Nintendo you could see the difference. And I'm gonna close this topic with how much the PC and the console aspect of gaming, or that line that defined a difference between those two, got blurred. But I'm going for Nintendo first. Nintendo Switch was kind of a inflection point on the debate on why Microsoft and Sony, respectively with the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, the physical versions, most of them were just Blu-ray that have like a 100 to 500 megabyte of data, which was just included the license. And that's another aspect about the dangers of physical media disappearing. Sony hasn't been shy on closing out digital store without giving something tangible for anything that you have paid. And I'm talking about the not only the PlayStation TV service, but the PlayStation Video service that some games like Batman Arkham's Asylum included the Batman Year One animated movie, and it was so incredible that Sony ignored all the pleas for having kind of a compensation, and a few years later we got Crunchyroll taking over Funimation, and I remember some friends saying, well, what about all the content that I paid on Funimation that are not available at Crunchyroll? The sentiment was that it will arrive on the service, but you're not getting anything back, not even the equivalent of what could have been the monthly fee that Crunchyroll charged. Nothing. So the perspective of, because that's what's another thing that I got answered back is that what about when PlayStation, Xbox, or insert your platform decides to invalidate your license? There's nothing you can do about it, even with physical medium games. But at least the physical mediums allows you to have the game not reinstall it that you can play it back, but it at least it gives you some sort of a connection with the server that grants you the game versus in a unilateral way, a platform denying you a content that you pay for. Even if it's a license, you pay for the license, you are entitled to be either granted some access or get your money back. And that's something that Google's didn't want to play with Stadia. Yeah, Stadia was a failure, and this is another topic for another episode. But in my opinion, it fails day one having Phil Harrison as VP of Google Stadia. But besides not granting refunds if you buy the Stadia Founders Edition in the pop-ups Google Store in the New York airport and Best Buy, everything else Google just refunded it. One of the main key problems was that Google refunded with the uh payment method. So some people got into some trouble, like I did, because one of the payment method that I use on some games wasn't in existence anymore, and yes, I'm talking about credit card. And while it helped me to clear the debt that I had with that closed credit card, I did want to have the money back. Also, I made the mistake. I'm using Google Play points for actually buying Stadia games or Stadia access to game. Let's talk with property here. But the fact remains that Google Stadia did its job. Google did its job like it was to do. Sony has this tenacity going so against consumers so bad that it really does give positive points on why being pro physical medium is not being wrong, and it's not being like someone who's trapped in the past. It's all about you being a consumer and being respected as a consumer. Now, I mentioned it about the blur between PC and console, and I think this all started with the seventh generation of video game console with the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, and the Nintendo Wii. In reality, until the original Xbox, PlayStation 2, and the Nintendo GameCube, you didn't need to install anything. You didn't need to wait for patch 1 games. And in some point in the early years of at least the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, you didn't need it to also install the game. Yes, you needed to install updates. A console needed an update. Yes, I was part of those people back in the 2006 where everything begins with this seventh generation. It was weird seeing update in a console. Yes, PlayStation 3 allowed you to install Windows and any Linux distribution back in the day, but it was weird reading the word updating in a console. That this tackles when a game came half baked and there was nothing you can do about it unless you return the game uh, from PlayStation 2, original Xbox, GameCube backwards. That is one thing. But to me, it makes the separation line between PC gaming and console gaming completely blur. And nowadays, I found it really, really invisible if there is a line. Let me know in the comments if you're seeing this on YouTube. What are your thoughts about MindsEye, and you got any faith that everything will get soon enough being fixed up? Are you a early adopter of the game? Let me know in the comments your experience. Also, do you agree with me about all that I said about physical mediums and all? Remember to hit the like, subscribe, and the notification bell for everything gaming news, retro gaming, and more episodes of Continue News and Gaming. If you're listening this via Spotify and all major podcast publishing, please check out all my channels and consider it a subscription. Also, everything gaming news readable in my blog, jesusgg.syc. With this was Jesus from Jesus Gaming, Health and Success. Happy gaming. Thank you.